get it Taquan, get it Sanjay. Like, never. It'd always be like, get it Jamie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the truth.
What's up, rebels?
My name's Willy.
My name is Leo.
I'm from the UK.
I'm from the US.
We are a couple.
We are queer.
Yes, queen. And we out here.
Today, we are going to be talking about white privilege in the LGBTQ plus community.
What does it mean? Does it differ from generic white privilege? Why is it so divisive?
We're going to be having an open and honest conversation because this is a safe space
where we'll share our thoughts, and whether we agree with each other or not, we'll keep it cool,
keep it cute, and definitely keep it classy.
So, without further ado,
let's get into it. Gay agenda, gay agenda, gay agenda, gay agenda.
Now, we have created some topic points that we can discuss. We're going to talk completely unfiltered, but before we start, we're going to have a focal point of which we can draw white privilege to. So we've looked up a definition and we're going to read it out right now. Inherent advantages possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society categorized by racial inequality and injustice. I'll be the first to acknowledge that I do benefit from white privilege. So this is the focal point, okay? Awesome. Now, let's actually get into it.
Yeah. Is white privilege really a thing in the LGBTQ community today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's pretty fair to say yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I think it is, because I think if it wasn't, then there wouldn't be such a rally to help black trans women right now. I think, as well as like having the white privilege, it's the opposite end of what you get from not being another identifier.
Yeah.
So.
It's not just what you get if you're a white person, it's what you don't get if you aren't a white person.
Exactly.
That means just as much, if not more, than the white experience in this relationship of the reality of experiences.
Exactly. And also, even within the gay community, there is such a push for like this like white twink looking, which also can cross into trans guys, whether they're gay or not, or open to all of the above. And there's this like push on white twinkie as this like ideal look, which in itself is inherently racist. There's reasons why that is an image.
There's definitely a lot of stereotypes and expectations in the queer community that are quite white coded. Even in the cliches that we have, there are some identifiers like dyeing your hair bright colors. That's not something that's always going to be super accessible to people of color because of hair textures and reactions to certain things like chemicals in your hair and how you take care of your hair.
Blue hair dye into my type 4C hair. I don't think so. I don't think absolutely not. It's honestly a brilliant point. That's very true. It's the idea of queer being so colourful, and so like someone like me, I put braids in, and if I wanted to, I could have, coloured braids, but that's very expensive. You know, as opposed to people who can just do home box dyes for like $6 or £6 wherever you grab them from. It's like there's definitely different ideals, different standards for sure. In images and identifiers, and I feel like that can allow people to feel, especially people of colour, to feel like, oh, I'm not the standard of beauty within this community.
And I also feel like in terms of representation within our community as well, and the way that white privilege plays a big role in that, is like, to me, I know we're in a time where we are trying to balance out the scales of representation for different minority groups, including people of color and the LGBTQ plus community, particularly trans people. However, right now, it does feel that often the representation that's being made is only being made for the sake of combating that issue, not just for the sake of making it. You know, if there is a POC queer person casted in a role, it's a big moment for us, and rightfully so, because we've been lacking that kind of representation. But it can be frustrating that is sometimes maybe the reason why that casting director or that writer is putting that in is just for the sake of creating representation that would in turn then make them benefit from the queer community.
Yeah, exactly. Just gonna point out, you've used terminology like our community and Elvis. For those of people watching at home who will of course assume you are white because you have incredibly white passing, Leo is he doesn't, do you categorize yourself as white?
I am mixed race.
Yeah.
I know very clearly that I am white passing, so I experience life in a very particular way because of that. So yes, I am white passing, however I am not a white person. I'm mixed race.
Boy. In Nigeria.
You see the curls? They're natural, okay?
Next question. How prevalent is white privilege in the world of content creation?
Ooh.
Oh my god. I've got thoughts.
Yeah?
Yeah, I would say I've got thoughts.
You want to kick this off? Or
Yeah, I would be happy to. I definitely think it's prevalent in the world of content creation. And I think one of the people who I'm actually really happy who openly discusses it is actually Jammi Dodger, in a relationship with Shabba. Shabba's a brown person, and he talks about how they would do podcasts and say literally identical things, and people will only zone in on Shabba for the negativity, and he's called it out for what it is. It's just those white biases, it's the white privileges.
Whilst it's not new to me to feel like people can criticise myself more openly, often because I am a brown woman, let's be honest, because that is what it is, because there is no other extrapolating factor when it's the exact same values on the exact same format of content. The only difference is it's happening more when I'm sitting next to a white man.
Jamie being able to get away with things that Shabba wouldn't be able to, and people won't necessarily consciously, and sometimes people don't consciously know that they're doing it, but there is white biases that lead to those things happening. And so for me, I would say 150%. It's why, if you think of like some of the most controversial queer content creators right now, The Offensive Tea, Scarcella, Blair White, Buck Angel, all four of them have something in common, and it's not just that they're misgender trans people. You know what I mean? Like, it's, you know what I'm talking about, and it's quite obvious.
Quite.
The reality of the situation is a black queer person would not be able to get away with being that divisive, being that controversial, without race being the main opposing thing in the comments. They can put anything they want out there, and maybe some people will say, hey, you're being transphobic, hey, you're being a sellout, but no one will ever mention anything about them being white, right? That's never, it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, you white to Blair White. That's not going to happen. It's, but I promise you, if a black person was that divisive, the first thing that people will mention would be their race. Either being you're a sellout, so you should be, you know, you should not feel this way, or you black this, you black that, you brown this, you brown that, you yellow this, you yellow that. It's the privilege that white people benefit from, is even just being that divisive and that controversial, which is funnily enough, qualities that are often pushed towards black women. And then white people who do it, they get called, oh, you know, a little bit quirky, a little bit controversial, but a black person does it, you know? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Say Willy does something, but if I do the same exact thing, no one bats an eye. And it's like, well, I thought that thing was weird. So is it weird or is it not weird? You need to make up your mind about it.
Exactly.
You know, and the reality is that they're not upset about the thing, they're upset about the person.
Yeah, the person
that's
doing
delivering
it.
Yeah. You know? It's
completely true, because a lot of phrasing that is now being popularized and like capitalized by, you know, RuPaul, like, you know what I mean, or just gay white men in general, they come from black women, and we don't need to debate that. And so it's how it's how even the language, how, you know, white people, content creators in general, some of them get famous using language that really is derivative of African American or just African in general culture. So of course there's privilege there. It's how a particular content creator recently got called out for abusing his brown ex fiance and has been completely silent on the matter despite being culturally insensitive and being called out for it and not even issued one apology or acknowledgement. It's how he can get away with that. But if we broke up and I was doing that to you, I never would. Just saying. Just saying. Not the police coming to call me out.
Oh, they said be careful.
Oh, back up.
And of course, it is worth noting that in that particular scenario that you're mentioning, if the roles were reversed, even in the people that are in that situation, that backlash flip would still happen in that same way that you're speaking of for yourself.
Exactly.
You know, it would very much be a different scenario. And that's not to say that it's completely being ignored, because there is amount of discourse about situation online in various like parts of the internet. But the reality is that like it's nowhere near what it would be had it been the other way around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Next point.
Yeah, let's go to our next one. How is the experience of being queer/LGBTQ plus different for people of color than it is for their white counterparts?
I got a question for you. So, you are obviously very white passing.
Yes.
But you grew up with a black mum. Would you say that you have a white queer experience or a POC queer experience?
Sorry. So sorry. You know what? I'm gonna say an answer that goes right along with me and say it's a mixed experience. There are many times where I do definitely experience white privilege within society and within the LGBTQ community specifically. However, being POC but being white passing does come along with very unique experiences, particularly when it comes to like within the POC community.
Yeah, you can't sit with us.
Yeah, that sort of like feeling like a bit of an imposter in your own spaces. It took a lot for me to really feel comfortable at all inhabiting POC spaces and queer POC spaces as someone who is very white passing, because I do recognize that I will look like an outsider, and that is something that other people will notice as well. But outside of that and within the wider community, I think there are often times where I will experience white privilege up to a point where then the white people who are treating me with that privilege then can no longer look past the mixedness of myself. And then I start to lose that privilege, and it shifts into then a different type of racial bias. It's very weird. It's very weird to experience.
I bet there are other mixed race people who are queer who like totally understand how you feel. I think that's not even limited to the mixed queer experience as opposed to the mixed experience.
Definitely.
Yeah. I would say, black experience, obviously. I would say the difference is sometimes, I would say just in general, black people can be tough when it comes to queer in general. Like, that's not a thing in some cultures. Like, some, countries in the Caribbean, in Africa, literally will ban you if you are queer. And so for people, migrants, immigrants who even came over here, they still may have the principles of their ancestors. And so trying to disengage from that can be difficult for the generation right above me. So I think people of like my generation, right now, we still have parents who, what do you mean you're gay? Isn't that a white thing? Like, genuinely, like, it's a white thing. I would say that for the black community, and of course this is not inclusive to everyone, I'm generalizing for the sake of having this conversation, there are definitely more prejudice, and there's definitely more discrimination in general towards the community, especially for black men. Being a black man and being gay in some countries is like, I would rather you your mum than be gay.
There are certain spaces in many countries, and this includes Western countries as well, so don't get it twisted. There are many places where being a black gay man is a death sentence, unfortunately. And it's very, very much going back to one of our earlier questions, it is very much still prevalent today. It's not a thing of the past. It's not a thing of just Stonewall eras or, you know, fighting for rights. It's still, just because we have gay rights doesn't mean that these things aren't still major issues.
Yeah, period.
Yeah.
Also, I'm speaking as a black person. Let's talk the brown community, you know, and, you know, not trying to generalize here again, but within the brown community, there are also strong religions. And so let's talk about the Islam community, you know, Sikhs, anything like that, which is very prevalent within the brown community, who think that, you know, LGBTQ in general is haram. When you see movies growing up, at least when I saw movies growing up, of like queer kids coming out to really happy families, they were always white. And I don't remember ever seeing like a black mum or black dad or brown mum or brown dad be like, yes, get it to Kwan, get it Sanjay. Like, never. It'd always be like, get it Jamie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the truth. There wasn't even representation, so like we couldn't even have our parents learn through TV because they didn't even bother to challenge the narrative.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because in the realm of representation, it basically goes, you know, white cis gay men, white cis gay women, white trans people, and then like tiers and tiers down the line is black, you know, trans women, black queer women. It's the realm of representation and therefore the realm of like knowledge and willingness to learn past sort of outdated cultural biases and beliefs is very limited at times because of the lack of resources that we have to even give that generation so that they can unlearn those negative things.
Exactly.
One thing that definitely within like mainstream media and like media culture and all those realms as well is, you know, it's very important that we get the representation that we need there, and that is growing over time. In the past, you know, 5 years or so, that representation has skyrocketed in some forms, which has been a really great thing. It's always good to see representation for POC, for LGBTQ+, and for the varying experiences that we have in our communities.
Okay, so our last topic of discussion is, what can white LGBTQ plus people and allies do to support queer POC? POC being people of colour.
Interesting. I think one thing to start with, which if you're here watching this video, then it seems like you might be doing this already, and good for you. The first thing is self-education. Knowing as much as you can without expecting or straining the labor of people of color to explain it for you is a really good way to kickstart your ability to be a better ally.
Absolutely. Definitely. And I think I would say listening to people of colour when they tell you how they feel and how something is making them feel. There is a privilege in being ignorant on these matters, just to be clear. Saying I don't see why this is offensive, that's not just a flex, it's actually a privilege, because those who are offended can't opt out of that. We don't get to look at it from like a philosophical perspective and just go, oh, does this feel this way or does this not? Being black, being brown, being people of colour means that we don't get to opt out of it. It's how we feel. It's ingrained within us. And so listening to people like ourselves is a great place to start. And I don't mean just because a black person says this, that means they're right, but engaging in a conversation that's respectful both ways and having that mutual respect for each other where you're both willing to listen, you're both willing to learn. If you go into a conversation already with those defensive walls up, you might as well just not have the conversation. Save your money, travel money, and just stay at home. For both of us, we have these identifiers that hold a lot of discriminative weight. And so we have to have those discussions to see how we can survive and how we can coexist and be better for each other. So we encourage you to do that as well. That's one thing you can definitely do. Listen, have conversations with queer people, have conversations with POC queer people, and bring everyone to the table. Nobody needs an echo chamber. You don't need to go to your black African American community for a day. You can just have an open conversation with queer people of varying degrees, with varying backgrounds, because one POC is not the same as another POC, and culturally we are different. Black and brown aren't the same people. We may have overlaps in upbringing, parents, and some of the regimented upbringings that we have because of our ancestors and stuff, but again, we have differences as well. So also don't lump us into one.
Yeah, definitely. I want to say something directly to the white trans people who may be watching this. I have noticed in the very, like, recent past, there's been some interesting conflict between white trans people and queer or non-queer POC people, in that some trans people are sort of trying to compare or weigh out the pros and cons of the experience of a trans person versus a person of color. And it's sort of a very toxic comparison of, oh, I get hated on this way, oh, you get discriminated for this, but I get discriminated. Trauma Olympics, that's what it is, that's what it is. And quite frankly, it needs to just dead. It needs to be gone. You need to let that go. Anyone who's holding on to that kind of stuff, you need to let it go, because first of all, none of the oppression that anyone in that discussion faces is their fault. The person at fault, the people at fault, are the oppressors. So there's no sense in debating who's got it worse. Just work together to make lives better for everyone. That's the only thing we need to be doing. And ultimately, the divisiveness that comes from those kind of discussions is exactly what oppressors want. Because if we're fighting within our own communities, we're not fighting against the communities that are oppressing us. Yeah, I don't even know what to say after that. Like,
is there any more, really, truly?
just stop.
No.
Stop it.
Thank you for coming to this discussion. We know it's a little bit more serious than what we normally do, but we like having debates. We like having chats. This is something that we're really into just in general. We have these conversations anyway, and so we thought we would invite you into our chats. Let us know if you're interested in us doing them again. To be honest with you, whether you are or not, we're probably going to continue because we like them. We are the type of content creators who are like, you know what, if it makes us happy, then yeah, that's right. And if it doesn't,
we don't do it.
if it doesn't make the audience happy, then it's not the right audience for us. We want to make sure that we enjoy what we do, and so we hope you do enjoy it, and we can continue to do this regardless. But thank you so much for spending your time with us. If you got to the end of this, thank you so much. Our goal is to get 1,500 subscribers before the end of May. We are so incredibly close, and we cannot believe it.
Close.
We just want to thank you so much for the love you've given us so far, and thank you for the love you continue to give us. We love you very, very much. So drink water, eat your roots. Bye.
Bye. Bye.